It must have been shortly after 8:45. We had just gotten in the car from LaGuardia Airport. We were actually headed to the financial district, or very close to the financial district this morning. And after only being in the car probably for 5 or 10 minutes, I looked up and saw a cloud of black smoke. And if you followed that smoke, it went right to the first of the two towers. And I asked our driver, I said, is that one of the trade towers on fire? And he looked up. I mean, it could only be that. And he immediately turned on CBS News Radio, and there it was, the report of the first explosion. And we were there watching the building when the second plane hit the second tower, but our view of that tower was blocked, and we didn't see it.
All right, Lisa Hughes, obviously we'll be talking with you throughout the day and throughout the evening. We appreciate that live report from New York. Lisa Hughes is down in New York on a totally unrelated event today. I happened to travel through Logan Airport this morning just at the time that terrorists were boarding planes at Logan Airport. Thank you, Lisa. We will check back with you. We'd like to give everybody the flight information now of exactly the flights that were involved that originated from Boston's Logan Airport. You can see there American Airlines Flight 11. It's a Boeing 767. It was bound for Los Angeles. There were 92 passengers and crew on board. It is one of the planes that crashed into one of the towers. Also, United Airlines Flight 175, a Boeing 767, also en route to Los Angeles. 65 passengers and crew on board. They have yet to tell us. They have told us that plane crashed, but they have not told us exactly where it did crash. The need for blood is critical, we are told, and that if you can donate blood, you're asked to do so. The need in New York is crucial at this hour. Let's check in now with Josh Binswanger. He is in Framingham, where Acting Governor Jane Swift spoke a short time ago. Josh?
All right, Joe, thank you very much. And do want to just follow up, having worked right across the street from the World Trade Towers for some time down in New York City, the biggest difficulty the crews are going to have at this particular juncture is limited space. That area of New York is all landfill, and due west of the towers is the Hudson River. The streets all come to a point. It's almost like leaving Boston Common, where the streets all intersect with each other. There's very little room for them to work, not to mention the fact that the towers are directly above the 1 and 9 trains and the N and R trains. So there are large cavities under that existing structure to begin with. It's going to be a very difficult and long process to try and get people out who are trapped in those buildings as this rescue and search efforts continue. We do want to focus on Governor Swift and the comments that she made earlier today, shortly around 12:30 this afternoon, along with Attorney General Tom Riley and other state officials. She addressed people of the Commonwealth.
I also want to convey one special message to the citizens of the 9th Congressional District. I think the most important thing that the citizens of Massachusetts can do today is to show up in large numbers to vote. Terrorists operate by creating a culture of fear. It is understandable that citizens of Massachusetts, seeing these reports on television, would have some fear. I want them to know that we will take all necessary actions and have taken actions to make sure that our public voting places are safe. We will continue to have a state police presence at those places, but the best thing that citizens of our great country and our great Commonwealth can do today is to send a very strong message that we will not bend to the terror that has been inflicted on our citizens and on our nation.
Strong words from the governor in favor of the democratic process as the 9th District primaries are continuing at this hour. She also talked about the fact that it's important for people to remain calm. We are working on a level 2 alert that doesn't make a big change in terms of how the state is being run. They're not taking any real action, but they are encouraging residents of the Commonwealth to be vigilant. Stay on top of what is going on. If you are a non-essential state employee, you are encouraged to stay home. If you're at your office, you've been asked to go home this afternoon. Now, we also want to talk about some of the assistance that Massachusetts is providing the state of New York at this particular juncture. She spoke, the governor spoke earlier with Governor Pataki's staff. They had requested the use of 2 F-15s out of Otis Air Force Base on the Cape. Those F-15s are in New York airspace at this time. And FEMA requested a search and rescue team from Beverly. It's one of 27 in the country. They are on their way to New York to help in those search and rescue efforts as we speak. Joe, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Josh. The American Red Cross has just called our newsroom, and they're asking us to tell everybody out there, if you're thinking about donating blood, to please wait until tomorrow. Obviously, they themselves are overwhelmed with what's going on today. They will have the people in place tomorrow. If, in fact, you choose to donate blood, the best time to do it is tomorrow. tomorrow. Amtrak has suspended service up and down the Northeast Corridor, and we are being told that the pilot on board the American Airlines Flight 11, which crashed this morning into one of the towers, is being identified as John Boganowski from Dracut up in the North Shore here in Massachusetts. We, of course, will continue to follow these developments as they affect Boston, Massachusetts, and New England. We'll stay on top of this story. We'll bring you developments throughout the day. For now, let's go back to Dan Rather and the CBS network.
Bin Laden. So that message has gone out again. I'm sure that we've insisted that they give us any cooperation that they might be able to, and we've asked that of our allies and other countries around the world. Part of that will be intelligence sharing, and part of that would be deploying of resources.
RP-80, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
James Kelson, who was formerly head of the New York City FBI office and was the assistant director of the FBI, and is on the, not just on the telephone, he's with us now, former director of the FBI office in New York. Jim, it's good to see you again. Put this in context and perspective for us, and let our viewers and listeners know you were in charge of the investigation of the TWA-800 crash investigation, have a lot of experience with this kind of thing. Give us some context.
Dan, it's a huge event. It's a black day. In my view, it's a bigger event than Pearl Harbor. It's war. It's declared war, and we need to now pull together as a nation and accomplish a bunch of things.
Well, nearly everybody's been talking today about the FBI's role, and obviously the FBI has a large role, but the FBI alone cannot possibly investigate something such as this. What other agencies, what other resources the U.S. government pulled in to find out who's responsible for this?
Well, all the intelligence agencies, the CIA, NSA, law enforcement at every level, work together on a daily basis as a team now. The idea, though, that we can know everything, and obviously we didn't know everything. When I say we, I'm talking about that team that I used to be a part of. This event happened, so we did not stop it from happening. It's terribly difficult in a free society with open borders, and on any given day, people land at Kennedy Airport and other gateways undocumented. It's very difficult, and particularly with Middle East terrorism, these cells are not joined together. The only thing that joins them together is their hatred for us, our way of life, our foreign policy.
But Jim Kelson, you say that these various terrorist organizations are not necessarily as well connected as we sometimes might imagine them to be. Give us some perspective on who among the world's states helps them with what they do. I'm not suggesting that we know anything about who did this today, but the questions just tumble out. Well, can someone do this without some state support from someone like Iraq or Iran?
Well, you know, Dan, whether or not this is state-supported, there has been state support over the years, and, you know, if this was 1% or 10% or 100% state-supported, I don't know. I'm a civilian now. I'm sure that the FBI and the agency and all the other intelligence apparatus of the free world, for that matter, is trying to figure out exactly who's behind this, and we need to act with massive power, in my view, without a lot of collateral damage, and that's difficult to do. But this is an act of war, and we need to act accordingly. Now is the time to step up to the plate and do the things that we need to do here as a country.
Jim Kelson, when you were still active with the FBI, true or untrue, that there were a number of terrorist acts in which the threads of evidence led back to certain states, but that for reasons, perhaps understandable reasons of diplomacy and what we call geopolitics, there was a tendency to say, well, we may know that, but we don't want to deal with it. True or untrue?
No, I think that's true, Dan. I think that obviously there has to be balance in actions that we take. I mean, these events look very clear once they happen. I mean, now that this horrific act has happened, and then we have untold dead people in New York and Washington and some airplane in Pittsburgh, it's crystal clear that we need massive, effective, high morale law enforcement intelligence. We need to act as a unified country. We need to stop the hypocrisy. Not that hypocrisy got us to this day. I'm not saying it did. But this is serious business. And those of us in law enforcement over the years, and intelligence work over the years, didn't know what day this would happen, hoped it would never happen, but thought surely someday it might happen. I mean, we saw the World Trade Center bombing. We saw in the United States. Then we saw events, the Blind Sheikh going to blow up the Holland Tunnel, the Lincoln Tunnel, the United Nations building, the FBI building. We saw Ramzi Youssef plot in the Philippines, well, after he escaped the United States, to blow up 9 or 10 jumbo jets simultaneously. We saw the bombing of the coal. We saw the bombing of the barracks in Saudi Arabia. We saw the bombing of our embassies in Africa. There's plenty of evidence that people hate us for who we are, what our foreign policy is. And we need to act. And we need to act together as a country.
James Kallstrom, formerly head of the FBI office in New York and a man who helped run the FBI for a long while. Thanks for being with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Rulers of the Taliban have rejected all suggestions that Osama bin Laden could be behind these attacks. We mentioned earlier that some leaders of the Taliban got out early to disassociate themselves from this whole thing. And the background of this is that by last reports, Osama bin Laden was in Afghanistan. There's been some pressure to get him out of there. The Taliban is responding today. The Taliban condemned the attacks, and they said that bin Laden had nothing to do with it. Tony Blair, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, is speaking. We go to him live.
The utter carnage and terror which has engulfed so many innocent people. We've offered President Bush and the American people our solidarity, our profound sympathy, and our prayers. But it is plain that citizens of many countries around the world, including Britain, will have been caught up in this terror. I have just chaired an emergency meeting of the British Government's Civil Contingencies Committee, and I would like to explain some of the measures that we have agreed to take here. There are a range of precautionary measures. We have stepped up security at airports to the highest levels. No flights will take off from the United Kingdom for which we cannot apply the highest standards of security for aircrew and passengers. Private flights have been stopped except where specifically authorised. Flight paths into London have been changed so there will be no civil overflights of central London. Security has been increased across the full range of government buildings and military premises. The police across the whole of the UK are on full alert. All our defence facilities around the world have been moved to high alert to ensure the protection of British service personnel. Advice has been given to major financial and business institutions about appropriate security measures. A number of other security measures have been taken, and of course we are in close touch with US, European and other allies and are cooperating with them on issues of security. All relevant ministers remain in communication, and the committee, the Civil Contingencies Committee, will meet again tomorrow at 8 a.m. Obviously, some of these measures, not least the effect upon airports, will lead to some disruption, and I hope people understand that. But other than the specific measures we have taken, or that we have advised others to take, business and everyday life can continue as normal. As for those that carried out these attacks, there are no adequate words of condemnation. Their barbarism will stand as their shame for all eternity. As I said earlier, this mass terrorism is the new evil in our world. The people who perpetrate it have no regard whatever for the sanctity or value of human life. And we, the democracies of the world, must come together to defeat it and eradicate it. This is not a battle between the United States of America and terrorism, but between the free and democratic world and terrorism. We therefore here in Britain stand shoulder to shoulder with our American friends in this hour of tragedy, and we, like them, will not rest until this evil is driven from our world.
Live from Great Britain, Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister, with his response and comments on what had happened today in one of the most horrifying attacks ever on U.S. soil. Terrorists crashed 2 airliners into the World Trade Centers today. This is a photograph taken at the time of one of the planes. American Airlines says it was one of the